Good morning, students. Welcome back to online class. Are you fine, students? I hope you all are fine. Students, till last week we learned Geography Lesson 5, India, Population, Transport, Communication and Trade. Is it? I completed that lesson and I gave all the book exercises also. Did you learn, students? I hope you learned. Students, those who did not learn, you should prepare that lessons book exercises. Okay, students. And also, did you prepare book inside one word questions, students? I hope you have prepared at least 100 questions in that lesson. And also, students, I have all the map exercises. Those who drawn the map, keep it a separate file. Okay. Those who did not do map exercises, you see the last class videos, try it and keep it in the file. Students, some book inside map also I gave. Did you learn, students? You should learn that map also. You may get one or two questions from book inside map also. So, mark it and keep it in a file. Okay, students. Today we are going to learn one new lesson. Okay. First of all, I am going to ask two or three general questions. Along with me, you also say the answer in your respective places. Okay. The first question is, which process is the integrative among people? Listen very careful. Which process is integrative among people? Answer is globalization. The answer is globalization. Then the second question, which word is termed to buy and sell goods and services? Very good. Trade. Listen very careful. Which word is termed to buy and sell goods and services, students? Trade. The answer is trade. Okay. Then the third question. In which way we can improve our country's economic condition? Very good. Answer is trade. Is it? Through trade, we can improve our country's economic condition. Then the last question. The process of doing trade all over the world is termed as, very good, globalization. The process of doing trade all over the world is termed as globalization. Okay, students. Now can you guess which topic now we are going to learn? Very good. Now we are going to learn globalization and trade. Listen very careful, students. Now we are going to learn economics part, lesson 2, globalization and trade. Already economic lesson 1 you learned from school, is it? Today I am going to start economic lesson 2, globalization and trade. Okay. Before entering the lesson, first of all, I am going to explain what is meant by globalization and what is meant by trade. Okay. Listen very careful, students. What is meant by globalization? Globalization is the process of interaction and integration among people, companies and governments in worldwide. Listen very careful, students. What is meant by globalization? Globalization is the process of interaction and integration among people, companies and governments in worldwide. Okay. Then the second one is trade, is it? What is meant by trade? Trade means to buy and sell goods and services. What is meant by trade, students? Trade means to buy and sell goods and services. Okay, students. In modern days, liberalization, privatization and globalization have become much talk of subject among politicians, economists and businessmen. In modern days, the politicians, businessmen and economists were talk about liberalization, privatization and globalization. Is it? Among them, the most important one is globalization. Among them, the most important one is globalization. It is one of the supporting pillar of economic condition. Listen very careful, students. The globalization is one of the supporting pillar of economic condition. Okay, our government implemented the new economic policy in 1991. Listen very careful, students. Our government implemented the new economic policy in the year 1991. Okay, mainly the globalization means the free flow of goods and services, technology, capital, and labor. Globalization means the free flow of goods and services, technology, capital, and labor. Okay. Under globalization, the international markets for goods and services are integrated. Listen very careful, students. Under globalization, the international markets for goods and services are integrated. Integrated means united. Okay. Students, from globalization, first we learn the history of globalization. Okay, first of all, we are going to learn the history of globalization. The term globalization was introduced by Professor Theodore Levitt. Listen very careful, students. The term globalization was introduced by Professor Theodore Levitt. Did you see the picture of Professor Theodore Levitt, students? He is Professor Theodore Levitt. Okay, he was introduced by the globalization. Professor Theodore Levitt introduced the globalization. Okay, then the globalization can be discussed on three stages. Listen very careful. The first one is archaic globalization. Second one is proto-globalization. Third one is modern globalization. Listen very careful, students. I will repeat. The globalization is classified into three stages. Stage 1 is archaic globalization. Stage 2 is proto-globalization. Stage 3 is modern globalization. Okay. Now, first of all, I am going to explain the first stage. Which is the first stage, students? The first stage is archaic globalization. Okay, archaic globalization. What is meant by archaic globalization? Listen very careful. An early form of globalized economics and culture is known as archaic globalization. Archaic globalization means an early form of globalized economics and culture is known as archaic globalization. Then Andrew Gender Frank, he is one of the economists, he argued that the form of globalization. Listen very careful. Andrew Gender Frank, he is one of the economists. He argued that the form of globalization, he mentioned the trade where rises links between Sumerians and Indus Valley civilization in the 3rd millennium BC. Listen very careful. Andrew Gender Frank. Did you see the picture, students? He is Andrew Gender Frank. He is one of the economists. Okay, he is one of the economists. He argued that this form of globalization. Which form of globalization? Archaic globalization. And also he mentioned the trade where rises links between Sumerians and Indus Valley civilization in the 3rd millennium BC. Okay. And early form of globalization is linked with Roman Empire, Parthian Empire and Han dynasty also. An early form of globalization is linked with Roman Empire, Parthian Empire and Han dynasty also. And also the Islamic age also one of the important early stage of globalization. Listen very careful, students. And also the Islamic age also one of the important early stage of globalization. It is rise before 16th century. It is rise before 16th century. In this period, for the purpose of trade, the commercial centers of Middle East and China constructed Silk Road and Spices Road. Listen very careful, students. In this period, for the purpose of trade, the commercial centers of Middle East and China constructed Silk Road and Spices Road. Did you see the map, students? This is Silk Road and Spices Road. Okay, this is Silk Road and Spices Road. Okay, then through this road they import and export silk and spices. Through this road they import and export spices and silk, so that these roads get the name silk and spices. Okay, then the second one is proto-globalization. The second one is proto-globalization. Which is the second stage, students? The second stage is the proto-globalization. Okay. Then the next phase is known as proto-globalization. It was rise from European empires in the 16th and 17th centuries. Listen very careful, students. This proto-globalization is rise from European empires in the 16th and 17th centuries. Okay, 16th and 17th century. At first, some of the countries conduct trade with other countries. For example, Portuguese, Spanish, Dutch and British empires also conduct trade in the period of 16th century. Listen very careful. At first, some of the countries conduct trade with other countries. For example, Portuguese, Spanish, Dutch and British empires conduct trade in the period of 16th century. But in the 17th century, globalization became private business phenomenon. Listen very careful, students. Up to 16th century, some of the countries, for example, Portuguese, Spanish, Dutch, British empires, these all empires were contact with the trade to one country to other country. But in the beginning of 17th century, the globalization became private business phenomenon. Okay, it became private business phenomenon like British East India Company. Like British East India Company. The British East India Company is one of the private business phenomenon. Okay, private business company. This British East India Company was formed in the year 1600. Listen very careful, students. The British East India Company was founded in the year 1600. It mentioned as the first multinational company. The British East India Company mentioned the first multinational company. Okay, and also it established the first Dutch East India Company in the year 1602. Listen very careful. The British East India Company was founded in the year 1600. Important one word question. Okay, students, you underline it. British East India Company was founded in the year 1600. Then this British East India Company established the first Dutch East India Company in the year 1602. Okay. Okay, students, the third one is modern globalization. The third one is modern globalization. Listen very careful. The modern globalization rise in 19th century. Listen very careful, students. The modern globalization rise in 19th century. In 19th and 20th century, some of the differences came between globalization. Listen very careful, students. In 19th and 20th century, some of the differences came between globalization. Mainly, there are two main differences came. The first one is the global trade in the country as well as capital, investment and the economy also increased. Listen very careful. The first one is global trade in the country. Through global trade, the capital were developed, investment increased and the Indian economy also increased. Okay, economic condition also developed. Okay, then the second one is the global trade in 19th and 20th century. That means that this second one is the global trade in 19th and 20th century shows the higher share of trades, merchants production, growth of trade in services, rise of production and trade by multinational firms. Firms means companies, is it? Firms means companies. Listen very carefully. There are two main differences came. In which centuries? The 19th and 20th centuries. Through modern, that is modern globalization. That is modern globalization. Okay, 19th and 20th century, some of the changes came through the economic condition because of globalization. There are two main differences came. The first one is the global trade in the country. The global trade in the country. Because of global trade in the country, the capital, investment and economic condition were developed. Okay. Then the second one is the global trade in 19th and 20th century shows the higher share of trade merchants production, higher share of trade than merchants production, how much they are producing. Then growth of trade in services, through services how the economic the trade were developed. Okay, then rise of production, how much production were raised, that means developed. Then and trade areas through the multinational firms, that means firm means companies. Okay, multinational companies. Can you understand, students? Shall we recall the points? Today few topic only I taught. The next class I will continue. Okay, now I will repeat these topics. Listen very careful. Students, now we learned about economic lesson 2, globalization. Okay, globalization and trade. From here, first we learned about what is globalization. Did you remember, students, what is meant by globalization? Globalization is the process of interaction and integration among people, companies and governments in worldwide. Is it? Then next we learned about trade. What is meant by trade? Trade means to buy and sell goods and services. Is it? Then in modern days, this liberalization, privatization, globalization, these are much talk about some of the politicians, economists, businessmen, etc. Okay. Then among them, the most important one is very good, globalization. Among them, the most important one is globalization. Okay, it is the supporting pillar of economic condition. Through globalization, we are developing our Indian economy. Okay, listen very careful, students. Through this globalization, our Indian government developed our economic condition. Okay, globalization, that means worldwide trade. Globalization, worldwide trade. Because of the development of globalization, our government implemented the new economic policy. Is it? In which year our government implemented new economic policy? Very good. 1991. Okay, 1991. Then mainly the globalization means free flow of goods and services, technology, capital and labor. Labor, is it? What is meant by globalization? The free flow of goods and services, technology, capital and labor. Okay. Then students, from globalization, first we learned about the history of globalization. Is it? From globalization, first we learned about the history of globalization. Who introduced history of globalization? Who introduced globalization? Very good. Professor Theodore Levitt. Okay, students, listen very careful. Who introduced globalization? Professor Theodore Levitt. One word question, important one word question, you underline it. Okay, Professor Theodore Levitt introduced the globalization. Then the globalization is classified into how many stages? Very good. 3 stages. Is it? Globalization is classified into 3 stages. What are the 3 stages of globalization, students? Very good. The first one is archaic globalization. Second one is proto-globalization. And the third one is modern globalization. Is it? Then from there, first we learned about the first stage. Is it? Which is the first stage of globalization, students? Excellent. The first stage of globalization is archaic globalization. Is it? Archaic globalization. Okay. Now I am going to ask one question. What is meant by archaic globalization? Very good. An early form of globalized economics and culture is known as archaic globalization. Listen very careful, students. An early form of, listen very careful, students. What is meant by archaic globalization? An early form of globalized economics and culture is known as globalization. Archaic globalization. Then, who argued about archaic globalization? Very good. Andrew Gender Frank. Who is Andrew Gender Frank? He is one of the economists. Is it? He is one of the economists. He argued about archaic globalization. He mentioned that trade were rises links between some of the countries. First, the trade were links between Sumerians and Indus Valley civilization. In early people, that means Sumerians and Indus Valley civilization people were first started the globalization, that means worldwide trade, in the period of 3rd millennium BC. In the period of 3rd millennium BC. Then, and also after that, some of the globalization is linked with some of the countries, Roman Empire, Parthian Empire and Han Dynasty. Is it? Roman Empire, Parthian Empire and Han Dynasty. Then in this period, for the purpose of trade, the commercial centers of Middle East and China constructed Silk Road and Spices Road. Is it? In this period, for the purpose of trade and commercial centers, constructed Silk Road and Spices. Through this road, they import and export silk and spices. Then, listen, and also Islamic age also an important early stage of globalization. Then the second one is proto-globalization. Second one is proto-globalization. It was rise from European Empire in the 16th and 17th centuries. The archaic globalization is rise in which century? Very good. In the 16th century, then proto-globalization is rise from 16th and 17th centuries. 16th and 17th centuries. At first, some of the countries conduct trade with other countries. For example, Portuguese, Spanish, Dutch, British empires. These countries' empires are conduct trade in the period of 16th centuries. But in the 17th centuries, the globalization became private business phenomenon. Listen very careful, students. In the 17th century, the globalization became private business phenomenon like British East India Company. Like British East India Company. Then I am going to ask one question. Students. When the British East India Company was found? Very good. In 1600. The British East India Company was founded in 1600. Then the British East India Company established which company? Excellent. First Dutch East India Company. Is it? The British East India Company established the first Dutch East India Company. In which year the first Dutch East India Company established? Very good. 1602. In the year 1602. Then next we learned about the third stage. Is it? Which is the third stage? The third stage is modern globalization. Is it? The third stage is modern globalization. In which century the modern globalization was rise? Very good. The modern globalization is rise in 19th century. During this period, some of the differences came between globalization. That means some of the changes will came through this globalization. Mainly, two differences came. The first one is global trade in the country. Global trade in the country. That means capital, investment and economic condition were developed through this modern globalization period. Then second one is the global trade in 19th and 20th century shows the higher share of trade. Then merchants, production, growth of trade in services, rise of production and trade. These all things are developed through multinational firms. What is meant by firms? Companies. Firms means companies. Students, these are the things we learned in this class. Few topic only I taught in the first class. Then the next class I will continue and take the next topics. Students, now all are take a book. Turn the exercise pages. Page number 110. Page number 110. Roman number 4. Page number 110. Roman number 4. Give short answers. Roman number 4. Give short answers. First question. What is globalization? First question. What is globalization? Answer page number 303. Answer is page number 303. Globalization heading. Globalization heading, that para fully. Globalization heading, that para fully. See the answer, students. Globalization is the integration of a country with the world economy. Basically, globalization signifies a process of internationalism plus liberalization. Okay. Then, second question. Write the types of globalization. Second one is write the types of globalization. Page number 303. Page number 303. There one flow chart is there. Is it? One flow chart is there. History of globalization. Stage 1, archaic globalization. Stage 2, proto-globalization. Stage 3, modern globalization. You should mark that flow chart. You no need to draw flow chart, just you write. Okay, stage 1 archaic globalization, stage 2 proto globalization, stage 3 modern globalization. Okay, then some of the one word question you will mark. Book inside one word question. Turn page number 303. Turn page number 303. History of globalization heading. History of globalization heading. You see the answer. The term of globalization was introduced by Professor Theodore Levitt. Who introduced the globalization? Theodore Levitt. Okay, answer is Theodore Levitt. You underline it. Underline it. Then under archaic globalization heading, you mark 2 mark question. What is mean by archaic globalization? You form the question. Write the question. What is mean by archaic globalization? Write the question. What is meant by archaic globalization? Answer is that paragraph 5th line. That paragraph 5th line. An early form of globalized economics and culture known as archaic globalization. Mark it. Then turn the next page. Page number 303. Page number 303. There one map is given. Is it Silk Route and Spice Route? Silk Route and Spice Route. You mention it. This map you should mark. Okay. Land route, the red color line given. Land route, that is land route. Then sea route, blue color line. Okay, blue color line, sea route. Okay, you should mark it. Then from proto-globalization, you mark one word question. Last before fourth line, British East India Company founded in 1600. Underline it, important one word question. Okay, important one word question. The British East India Company founded in 1600. Then the next line, the first Dutch East India Company found in 1602. That also you underline, one word question. The first Dutch East India Company found in 1602. Okay, likewise line by line you should read and prepare the one word question. Okay students, the continuation of this lesson I will teach the next class. You will learn the exercises. Okay students, thank you.